All right, let's get to moves we think will get done. Maybe not necessarily we want to see, some we want to see, but that we think will actually happen when it's all said and done.
This is the most obvious one. This has been one that everybody has said, but Jacoby Myers to the Pittsburgh Steelers feels like when the deadline happens, this is going to be the first move that hits the deadline. It feels like he is a tailor-made fit for Arthur Smith offense in terms of doing the dirty work, the physicality over the middle of the field, the separation he can get in those intermediate areas. It feels like he sort of just ties everything together for the Steelers offense and the way the Steelers want to run their offense. Because of how much they run 12, 13 personnel, they started a major and getting a jumbo set with the 6 offensive linemen on the field, not including Darnell Washington, but getting that guy who can sort of create separation and do sort of the dirty work over the middle of the field, that's something that they really don't have. You know, they were hoping that Robert Woods would be that, but Robert Woods is a little older, not necessarily the same guy. Roman Wilson has shown to be more of a deep threat. So you have this offense full of deep threats and checkdowns and tight ends and Jonnu Smith. Jacoby Myers sort of meshes everything together.
Yeah, this one, I mean, we've been talking about this one, I feel like, for months. From the Raiders' perspective, I don't really know what the holdup is here. Like, you have to deal with this guy. There's no world in where you just roll out this season with him the rest of the year, let him walk in free agency and don't get anything in return. To me, that's just like bad team building, especially when this guy requested a trade preseason. It's like he didn't want to be there in the first place. I feel like maintaining those guys, it's like, yeah, if they're star players, if they're, Myles Garrett requesting a trade, it's a little bit different. This is not a guy in your long-term plans. This is not a guy that you need to make a example of in this locker room to tell people not to request trades. It's like, no, just get it done. Everything will be fine. Just get it. Just build for the future, Raiders, for once. All right. Off my soapbox. All right. My one that I think will get done. I think Chris Olave gets moved. The New Orleans Saints. Maybe not. Maybe I could be wrong here, but I think he is the one that's going to be more coveted than Shaheed, just because, I mean, he's the better wide receiver than Shaheed. And I think 2 teams could get involved in these sweepstakes. One's the New England Patriots. The other's the Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, the Seahawks, you would be kind of recreating that 2021 Ohio State wide receiving core. Not a bad thing to do, ever. And you have Clint Kubiak, who intimately knows Chris Olave because he worked with him last year when he was with New Orleans. So those 2 connections, I think, would make it really attractive to a Seahawks team that, as we've said a bunch, it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then no one. Like they are running their offense through Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he's been awesome at it. But if you add a secondary piece, and Olave is the perfect secondary piece to add to a Jackson Smith and Jigba in that offense, in my opinion, there's no stopping this passing. Like there's just no. Clint Kubiak is going to dial up these guys wide open 24/7 if you have 2 talents like Olave and JSN as downfield route runners. So that one I love. And then the Patriots, just because they were so desperate to add a receiver this past offseason. They kind of like kicked the tires on everything they could do to get one. Settled on Stephon Diggs. That's worked out, but Olave would be more of a long-term move. You could have him, he's under contract not only this year, but next year on his 5th-year option, and then you could sign him long-term after that. It would be a way of getting a guy in the fold who's what you need. Again, a downfield weapon for more than just this year. I'd be willing to give up like that Chase Claypool trade package that you saw to go get a guy like that. And for the Patriots, they're also like, their pick's going to be late at this point. They know that. It's not the risk of, if we trade away a second rounder, it could be pick 32 the way it was with Chase Claypool. No, it's going to be a late pick in that second round. So I think they're much more apt to move on from the picks, especially with the way they've used those picks in recent years.
I actually sort of like this for the Patriots more than the Seahawks. And I think it's because with the Patriots, adding Chris Olave makes everybody else shine in more reduced roles. Yes. Kayshon Boutte becomes more of a legitimate deep threat instead of having to constantly kind of be the 1B to Stephon Diggs 1A. Stephon Diggs can be a 1B to Chris Olave's 1A. You can turn Pop Douglas into more of a gadgety guy. You can have Hunter Henry doing sort of the in-between stuff. I really like this trade for the Patriots. Just you give Drake May another guy who can get instant separation and get separation downfield. I think the biggest thing is just keeping him healthy. And I think the reason why I sort of like this for the Patriots more than the Seahawks is you're not going to run Chris Olave over the middle of the field as often with Josh McDaniels. You are going to turn him into, we're going to run him on outbreakers. You're going to run him on comebacks, go routes, keep him on the outside of the route tree because he can win from that area. So imagining just Drake May throwing long handoffs to Chris Olave, I think that would really help them separate in an AFC that sort of needs that separation.
All right, what's your second move, JP?
My second move that I think is going to happen is Cam Taylor-Britt to the Indianapolis Colts. Yes. It just feels like, Lou Anarumo's going and getting all his guys. He's getting the band back together. And Cam Taylor-Britt is a guy that I think has incredible athleticism, incredible nose for the ball when in zone coverage, but it hasn't worked out because Al Golden is changing that defense, and he's just had a lot of confidence issues playing in man coverage. But now you get him back with his old coach, you get him back with Lou Anarumo, and you play him in such a zone-heavy defense in Indianapolis. And for a Colts defense that really, really needs just anybody in the secondary, with Charvarius Ward being injured, still on IR with concussion, you just need somebody with some talent on the outside. And I think Taylor-Britt sort of gives them another piece for this defense that has sort of been the weak link for the Colts. And the biggest reason why, if the Colts don't reach the heights where everybody think they're going to be, it'll probably be because they just lack the bodies in the secondary. So I want to see them go at a guy who's had familiarity with Lou Anarumo and that defense and is still young, still can be a feisty corner.
He was like the one guy in that secondary that actually was a good fit for Lou Anarumo's defense. Obviously, it's been a terrible fit for Al Golden's defense. Yeah, that one, it just, if the Bengals don't move on from him and Trey Hendrickson at the deadline, and obviously maybe they still think they're in it, and if they win this weekend, that'll change their tune and they won't deal either of these guys. But it's just like, read the room, read where you're at, get what you can, because Trey Hendrickson at least will be very much in demand. I think Taylor-Britt's going to take it'd be like a day 3 swap, but still, if Al Golden's going to be your DC going forward, he ain't going to be part of that team. All right. Next one here. I'm going to go with Breece Hall to the Kansas City Chiefs. Another team that I said that they are willing to go all in every single year. It's a running back. Running back trades don't come for much. I think about Jay Ajayi to the Eagles, their Super Bowl year. It's like a 4th, and Ajayi was playing well. I think that's what it'll take. And if you can get Breece Hall for like a 4th, dude, you run that in and go get Breece Hall. Like, it just, the Chiefs rushing game lacks dynamism right now. It just lacks dynamism. And teams are not afraid of it. They know you're not going to get big plays on the ground. Breece Hall, you add him to that team, that changes overnight. He is fully capable, if you give him a free run to the second level, of turning those into bigger gains. I think it just, if you're looking at this Chiefs offense and you're like, how do we just get pushed over the edge just a little bit to dominant, unstoppable force territory? Breece Hall would do that.
And the best thing about Breece Hall to the Chiefs is that he blends everything that all the Chiefs running backs do well right now. Rashard Smith is more of a third down specialist receiving back. Isaiah Pacheco is, you're going to get him under center carries. You want to get him downhill. And Kareem Hunt is your short yardage guy. Breece Hall does all of that in one player. He sort of helps that defense. He sort of helps that offense really have somebody who can blend. You're not giving an obvious tell when Isaiah Pacheco's in the game. This is going to be an under center run. When Kareem Hunt's in the game, he is a pass protector or he is getting the ball on 3rd and short. When Rashard Smith is in the game, it feels like 99% of the time he's catching a screen pass. So having a guy like Breece Hall sort of prevents any predictability to come from this Chiefs offense. And like you said, just the explosiveness that he can bring behind that offensive line that can win with movement, with athleticism up front. It feels like they've left a lot of yards on the table in the ground game. And I think that's a large part because of their running back situation. Breece Hall make a lot of sense here.
We shall see. We'll be tracking trades all throughout this week up until the deadline. Can't wait to see who's moved. I hope it's a big one. I feel like this is going to be a movement deadline just because there's so much jockeying that needs to be done. There's no one who feels confident in their position seemingly. There's so many teams that are good. There's no team that's just like, yeah, we're good enough that we like that we can just rest on our laurels. I feel like we'll see a handful of teams really looking to add here at the deadline.
Yeah, the margins for each team are so thin between
Yes.
surefire playoff and on the outside looking in. It feels like teams are going to be a lot more active, just adding guys to help put them over the edge because there's just more parity in the NFL this year. It feels like every team is on equal footing.